He never really seemed to get the adulation that some other horses got when he was racing. Although late in the piece, I think people appreciated the fact that he raced for so long at the highest level. And there was a lot of people who really did like the horse and liked to see him race. But I think probably in his 3- and 4-year-old year, he never really got the true, even though he won Horse of the Year, he didn't really get the accolades that some other horses do get.
Mahogany was something of a contradiction. Trained by the irrepressible Lee Freedman and winner of the Victoria and AJC Derbies, he went on to become one of Australia's best sprinters and the finest first-up performer of his generation. He had the lot: speed, stamina, courage, personality, and arguably the most colourful owner-trainer-rider combination in the land. Lloyd Williams, Lee Freedman, Greg Hall.
I think that the Freedmans thought he had average 2-year-old ability. I remember Lee Freedman, when he ran at Sandown, said to me after the run at Sandown that he thought he would make a group horse after the Sandown run as a 2-year-old. But he certainly wasn't suggesting that he was going to be a multiple Group 1 winner. He said he thought he was probably a group type horse, because it was an impressive run first up, and he was quite impressive at his second start at Moonee Valley. But Greg Hall, who you'd be aware I've had a long association with, said that one of the things that I needed to do with him was to geld him. You know, there's been a lot of great horses gelded after their first or second run. Kingston Town comes to mind as one, but we immediately gelded him, and he came back out in the autumn of that season, 1993, and he had a couple of runs in Melbourne, and they weren't inspiring runs, I'd have to say. His first 2 runs after he'd been gelded, he ran at Flemington and ran at Caulfield, 1,200 metre race and a 1,400 metre race, and they were, as an old punter as I am, I would have classed them as only fair. But he went to Queensland after that as a 2-year-old, and Mickey Dittman got on him at Doomben, and he was particularly impressive. He thrived in Queensland.
Here he comes, Mahogany. Pimpala's son has pulled to the outside and he's running on gamely. Mahogany's hit the front now from Santiago Bell and he's shot away. Looks as though he's got it won. Pimpala's son trying hard on the outside, but it's all Mahogany. Mahogany's far too good in the run to the post. He scores well. Pimpala's son second. Santiago Bell third.
You know, we went back from Brisbane down to Sydney, and he was going to get trained for all the major Group 1 type racing for a 3-year-old in the spring. He was very impressive first up in Sydney. Fresh, very fresh, coming straight off Queensland. You know, Greggy thought he was, that day, that, you know, it was the best thing he'd ever been on. He couldn't get over how he'd improved from Queensland. But, you know, he subsequently raced in another 1,200 metre race and then went to Newcastle in that typical 1,600 metre race at Newcastle and was extremely disappointing. Now, you know, he had 3 runs in Sydney. Now, we probably hadn't learnt anything, but we brought him back to Melbourne for the Caulfield Guineas, and I remember having this discussion with Lee Freedman, you know, let's space his races out and freshen him up a bit. And he went to the Caulfield Guineas, you know, with, I think it was 21 days, no, it was more than that, it was 24 days between runs, and he won the Caulfield Guineas.
Mahogany's out to challenge near the inside. Portwatch fights back and the stablemates turn in front. Portwatch, Mahogany travelling the better on the outside. Hall went for home at the 200 metre mark now. Mahogany got a neck in front of Portwatch. A gap in the field too. Let's Cut Loose and Kendall Star, but Mahogany under the whip is holding Portwatch, and Mahogany will win the Guineas. Mahogany from Portwatch, a Freedman Quinella.
So here's Mahogany. Mahogany's cruised up to hit the front, 400 to go and win away. 2 lengths in front of Pride of Rancho. McGuan is into the career and running on, and then Kendall Star. Battlehawk can't go on, and then Let's Cut Loose, but Mahogany has bolted away. 200 metres to go, it's all Mahogany. He's got the Derby parcelled up, 5 or 6 in front of Let's Cut Loose. Shelves is running on strongly with Waikika Mutau, but Mahogany wins easily. Mahogany's won the Derby in a canter.
Mahogany was clearly a class middle-distance galloper, but there was some suggestion that it was his talent only that carried him the 2,500 metres of the Derby. He returned in the autumn, and people were starting to doubt Mahogany after a close call in the Australian Guineas and a third of 6 in the 2,000-metre Australian Cup. His efforts in 2 subsequent Sydney runs changed their minds.
Yes,
Hall's got to get busy, although he is peeping over the left shoulder. Tenner's running on strongly with Sable Dreamer, but Mahogany goes right on by and dashes to the lead past the 200 over Western Red, followed by Tenner and Sable Dreamer, but home goes Mahogany. Mahogany putting a gap in them in the last bit, is racing away, and he's going to win the Tulloch Stakes in a breeze. Mahogany by 3 lengths. Extreme outside as they come over the rise. Greg Hall looks extra confident on Mahogany. Zaremba's in front as they top the hill. Mahogany is gobbling him up very quickly with Waikikamu Cow and Arborea down the outside, but Mahogany swept to the lead, 100 out. He's got them struggling. Waikikamu Cow in second place, can't do any better, and then Arborea and Fraternity, but Mahogany flat to the board, just holding Waikikamu Cow, and it's the two-state Derby double to Mahogany.
Mahogany resumed for his eagerly awaited spring campaign with this effort.
Mahogany's coming after him. Heights battling. Credit account for the run on the outside. State Taj about 2 lengths. Mahogany's got him, I reckon. Hall had a look over his shoulder. State Taj grabbed by Mahogany in the last 100. Here's the champion racing away now. Mahogany first up. It'll be a brilliant win. And he draws away Mahogany to win it by 2 lengths to State Taj. Credit account third.
But then the warning signal started sounding. He had to pull out all stops to beat State Taj in a photo finish in the Craigley Stakes as a 5-2 on favourite, and then ran third in the Underwood. Lee Freedman spelled the gelding when he could manage only 7th of 9 in the Turnbull. That run, the decision not to continue on a Cox Plate campaign, and his very next race start changed the way racegoers perceived Mahogany from that point on.
Running to the 500-metre mark now. Hariba under a tight rein has gone up to join Sequalo, Keltrice, Brawny Spirit on the rail. 2 lengths behind them, then Eladon called on, and they're followed then by Mahogany under a bit of pressure at the 300-metre mark now. And it's on the outside, Hariba. He's calling on him to do something, sticking with him there. On the outside is Eladon. In fact, he's in trouble, Hariba. Eladon's claimed him, and Mahogany now. And Keltrice fighting back. No Hariba. It's a shock. It's Mahogany dashing to the front, and Mahogany scores. Mahogany's beaten Eladon.
Suddenly, Australia had a new top-line sprinter. And we were starting to realise that the galloper was almost unbeatable when produced fresh. The 4-year-old Mahogany ran into Scalacci and Hariba at his next 2 sprint starts, then failed in Sydney. So Freedman spelled his horse again. This time, though, things were different. His controversial owner, Lloyd Williams, hatched a plan that all but worked, and it took 2 champions to bring it undone.
Mahogany got the run at the 300, and Mahogany took the lead from Baryshnikov coming after him. Then Pearl Prince and Jern's unwinding now. It's Mahogany under the whip. He's got Baryshnikov beaten. Storm along the inside, and Jern. Mahogany in front. Jern's coming at him. Mahogany, Jern. Jern, Mahogany. They go to the line. Jern just got there to beat Mahogany. What a race.
That's right. He resumed over 1,600 metres this time. But that was nothing. The horse was freshened and set to take his place in the Cox Plate without a run for 7 weeks.
Well, it wasn't that difficult in terms of being able to use so many of the course proppers around Melbourne. I think we got Sandown on a couple of occasions. We certainly got Caulfield on a couple of occasions, and we usually had a fairly good supply of workmates for him. And he was one of those sort of horses, and being by Last Tycoon, that he didn't really need hard racing, and we discovered fairly early in the piece that, you know, hard racing he trained off pretty quickly. So the plan was to have him ready for the Cox Plate second up, and I don't think we could have had him much better. I thought the horse was pretty well spot on the day.
Here's Octagonal and Germ with a mighty run. Then getting through is on the inside Mahogany. Mahogany rails up with Octagonal at the 200-metre mark. On the outside, Octagonal. Mahogany coming at him, stride for stride now on the Cox Plate. Mahogany, Octagonal, Octagonal, Mahogany. Octagonal's got his nose in front. Octagonal wins the Cox Plate.
I probably enjoyed that race more than any other race of Mahogany's. I got beaten by one of my best friends, Jack Ingham. I got beaten by a jockey who's a great friend of mine, Shane Dyers. So I was happy they won if I couldn't win. I was absolutely delighted with the way the horse ran in the race.
We were a little unlucky to lose, and in hindsight, the fact that the inside of the track later on was then created a metre out because of the bias away from the inside. In hindsight, you know, perhaps if that had happened earlier in the piece with Moonee Valley, he'd have probably still won the race. But having said that, I think he he had to give Octagonal, who nobody knew much about at that stage, except that he was a promising 3-year-old. He had to give Octagonal, I think, 9 kilos or 9.5 kilos, maybe 10. And then to see what Octagonal did subsequent to that, you know, puts the performance in some perspective then.
But Mahogany reverted to sprinting a year later and showed his great ability when he did this.
Now Mahogany hits the front. It's Mahogany with Poetic King coming after him at the 100. Mahogany by a length, Poetic King, the stablemates. It's Mahogany giving plenty. Poetic King coming at him hard. Mahogany wanted to hit Poetic King.
It was a fast gallop, but the 6-year-old could go even faster.
Here is in trouble there, Mahogany. At the 200-metre mark, Spartacus hits the front. Ken Grande's coming at him on the outside. Mahogany, without a lot of room, is trying to squeeze through. He's got through Mahogany. He pounced on the lead from Ken Grande and Spartacus, and Mahogany, despite difficulties, draws away to win a length and a half.
Mahogany resumed again in October 1997, this time in the 1,000-metre weight for age Churnside Stakes.
On the inside, and now Mahogany. Here comes Mahogany storming down the outside to grab Spartacus and then be discreet, but Mahogany sprints right away. What a great horse he is.
Of course he won. But remember, this is the same horse that 5 seasons earlier won 2 Derbies. In the end, Mahogany just raced his way into immortality. A few racegoers will still have doubts, probably because his ability to sprint, stay, and keep on keeping on season after season made him difficult to assess. Certainly there have been better stayers, and there have been better sprinters. But can you name the last Derby winner that could win Group 1 1,000-metre sprints 4 seasons later? And what champion sprinter could win 1 Derby, let alone 2? Mahogany had a bit of everything, and he showed it for 6 seasons. He had the lot.